Welcome to another video, and in this video we are going to discuss one of the important topic called as the named pipe. Okay, so the name itself is very different. It's a named pipe. So let's start our discussion. So we already discussed if the threat actor want to do any changes in the registries or do anything in the operating system. So they need a high elevator privilege to do that operations, right? So we already did medium to high integrity privilege, but we need to transfer our privilege escalation to high to system integrity. Okay. So here I draw some diagram. This is a client and this is a service provider. So in the same time I will give the example for named pipe. Okay. So why we are using the named pipe based attack? So the attacks like named pipe impersonation. So what is a named pipe? Okay. So named pipe was one of the Windows feature that was introduced in Microsoft Windows, and that named pipe was used for communicating two process. Okay, so let's consider there are two process. Let's say there's a setutil and a bits admin. These two process want to communicate with each other. They will use these two process will use the named pipe for a communication. Okay, so basically if the set util want to transfer some data to the bits admin, it will use a named pipe, okay? Or if the bits admin want to transfer some message to a cert util, it will use a named pipe to a transfer, okay? Either it will transfer through a file or a network. So this is called as a named pipe. So named pipe is basically introduced for process communication. So communicate between two process. The Windows Microsoft Windows introduced that feature, okay, um, for every operating system. Okay, so let's talk about how we can elevate our privilege using the named pipe. Okay, so let's come to the diagram. So here you can see one of the Pureman, and he is a and and he is a client, and this is a service provider. Okay, so let's take service provider as a MySQL server. So it's a MySQL server. Okay. So this is a client or a user. So let's take client or a user. So if the user or a client want to query the MySQL, so what he will do? He will use a particular language, OS query or some other MySQL query to query the MySQL server, right? So that's a basic programming. So if you want to, if the user want to take any data from the MySQL server, he will query the database, right? He will query some program, select star from users. It will display all the users, right, inside the MySQL. So let's take the user only have a low level privilege. Okay, so user only have the low level privilege. Absolutely, our service provider will have some high integrity level privilege because it can able to interact with every database inside it, right? So once the uh, user gives some query to the service provider, this service provider will verify the user. Okay, so if the user only have a low integrity level, so if, for example, the low integrity level user only can able to query the database, okay, he can view the users, or he can view a particular column, or he can view some information in the database, okay. So only he can query the database, okay. He can get only the information. He can't able to delete, or he can't able to modify, or he can't able to add any table or column in the database, okay. So the service provider will take the user privilege, okay. So user privilege, and it will run the query as a user, okay. So this is the intermediate between the uh, client and the client or user or the and the MySQL server. Okay, this service provider will take the user's privilege, and it will verify that privilege. So if the user only can able to query the database, the user access control was only query the database. It will only query the database. Okay, it will only give the information based on the privilege. Okay, so if the let's think about this user. Okay, So let's I will delete the user and I will remove everything from here. So this is a Superman user. Okay, this is a Superman user and not a Superman. He's a Spider-Man, and he have a privilege. Sorry, he is one of the user. So I already discussed the service provider have has one of the privilege, right? The service provider has one of the privilege. It will take the user privilege and it will execute the query what the uh, based on the user privilege, right? Based on the user privilege, right? So let's say the service provider has a privilege, okay, and this client have a very high level privilege, okay, very high level privilege than the service provider, okay. So the service provider only have a high level privilege, but this client or user have a very high level privilege. This is the very high level privilege in the sense the privilege was greater than the service provider. So now what service provider will do? So if I am a service provider, I will abuse this client or user privilege to do some activities, okay. So let's say the service provider only can able to modify the data or add the data, okay. But this Spider-Man, this very high privilege user can able to add, modify as well as delete, okay. He can able to delete the database, okay. So now the service provider will, because this user, this very high privileged user, this Spider-Man need to interact with the service provider, right, to query the database, to do something with the database, okay. So now this service provider will get the user the Spider-Man privilege, right, will get the Spider-Man privilege. I mean the very high privilege. Okay. What he will do? He will query the database. By querying, the service provider will get the very high privilege to add, delete, and modify. Okay. By this, this service provider will get a very high privilege and he will do anything in the database, okay. So it was called as the impersonation, okay, named pipe impersonation, okay. So let's take an example of a real time. So what it will do, okay, I will explain. This is the example, okay. This is the overall understanding of what is a named pipe. I will explain it in how it will happen inside the computer, okay. So let's take as an example of our cobalt strike payload rootkit remover, okay. So let's take an example of our rootkit remover .exe. So what it will do, it will create a it will create a process with a high level privilege, okay. For example, it's a run dll 32.exe. Wait a second. Yep. So now let's take an example of a rootkit remover.exe, our cobalt strike payload. It created a run.dll32.exe as a system level privilege, okay. So it created a run.dll32.exe as a system level privilege. We know the rootkit remover will be the owner, okay, because we are the owner, right? So we only created the run.dll32.exe, okay. So we are the server or we are the owner, okay. So we created a system level process run.dll32.exe as a system level privilege, okay. So now what we will do, we are doing the same thing what I said in the above diagram. We are using this very high level privilege for our attack, for doing our malicious activities. Okay. So now this is the owner, this is the server, and the owner, the rootkit remover .exe will be the server or a owner, and the created process will be the running under the system level privilege. So automatically this rootkit remover will got a very high level privilege, right? So this is called as the named pipe impersonation. Okay. So in a above diagram, I already discussed these user have a very high level privilege, and if the service provider impersonate, abuse this very high level user privilege for for doing a malicious activities. So in this scenario, our client will be the run.dll32.exe, and our service provider will be our Cobalt Strike payload. Okay, so this is called as the named pipe impersonation. Okay, so we will see how to do the named pipe impersonation attack in a practical, okay, in the next video. So this theory video, but I hope I explained everything in a good way. So if you do not understand about this video, if you do not understand, so no problem, we will see in the practical section. Okay, that's all about this video. We will meet on you. So we will meet you on the next video. Thank you for watching.